Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tier List Day. I know that a lot of people have been anticipating a tier list of some kind for 1.5, and I am here today to deliver. I always like to do a tier list about 2 weeks into a patch so that we can kind of see how the meta adjusts, but also know that this is not going to be perfect. The meta does continuously change because as more Tems come into the meta, other Tems that may not have been meta before can come in to counter them. And like 2 weeks is still pretty early into a patch, considering the patches are 4 months long with a mid-season patch somewhere in between. And then there's also other things like bugs that are may switch stuff around. I'm gonna try and ignore the bugs, but they'll still probably have some sort of influence on the tier list. I mean, Galios just has a lot of bugs, but we'll get there when we get there. Just some general tier list information for everyone to know. I will not be ranking the Tems within the tier. So if I throw 3 Tems in B tier, this is not saying Digichromion is better than Windchromion. Just it's just they're in B tier. I did split B up this time. I know that was something last time that I kind of ran into, and yeah, those. I just figured it would be better to give you guys a more general idea of which Tems are kind of like I don't know. I just threw too many in B tier, and I wanted to split it up. Also, just know that these are my opinions. I do play a pretty wide variety of teams, but also I probably will have some bias in some picks, or maybe I've been playing a lot of faster hyper aggro teams lately, so maybe something that's stronger against bulky aggro but weaker against hyper aggro, I might end up placing lower, but it's not because it's bad, it's just because that's what I play, but I'm going to try and be unbiased in general. I think that covers most of it. I don't think there's a whole lot of disclaimers. I just wanted to let you guys know some of that stuff ahead of time. I am planning for the entire stream today to be tier lists, so if anyone's hoping for comp, I'm sorry, that won't be today. I still have tons of content, and I'm sure you haven't seen all of it on my YouTube channel or just the VODs. Yep, so we're gonna hop into it now. I guess another little thing. I am gonna skip over the Chromions and the Koishes until the end. I might look at them again at the end and place at least the relatively usable ones in tiers. But for now, we're just gonna kind of place other stuff. So first is Mimit, one of the more flexible Tems. It's always kind of like it usually flutters around B tier somewhere. Before the striking nerf, it was actually probably A tier. I would say now the striking's nerfed. It's not that it's unusable. It's still pretty. Mimit is like the definition of average because it's useless in so many situations, but it's also the most flexible Tem, and it's just depending on what situation or what Tem you pair it with. But it's not broken by any means. It's useful, but not crazy. Zabian. So Zabian did like receiving fast charge, so the fast charge nerf with Gazuma did hurt it a little bit. But still stuff like double Zabian with Mimit, and Zabian's still a great carry on Digi-aggro teams. Honestly, it's probably around the same tier as Mimit, because both are flexible. Zabian has so many moves it can click. It can be bulkier, speedier. It has options. Skipping the Chromions, like I said, we'll go to Molgu. So Molgu, I think, has a lot of value this patch. There's a lot of sleep going around. And so Molgu being one of the Sentinel users, or like with its trait, I think it can have a lot of support that way. And also Digital is a really good type to have. With Reactive Vial, Molgu's super bulky and can take just about any 2 hits. So I would say like in this meta, I think Molgu's B plus tier. Although like Molgu doesn't do anything like really special, it's just kind of useful utility to have, and also strong and almost a must-have on bulky aggro teams. Hello, Lucas. Welcome. I mean, this will probably change around once Galios gets changed a little bit. Once it's not allowed to spam Adrenaline Shot, Jinx Whisper, it'll probably change. But I'd say for now, I think Mogu's B plus. I think it's really strong. Sentinel's great. Platimus. If there was an A plus tier, I would put Platimus in there. Arguably, it's one of the only S tier Tems. So for now, I'm gonna put it there. I think so. Some people don't like S tier. They're like, oh, S. There's no S tier Tems this patch because everything's relatively balanced. I would say like compared to the other Tems on the list, the Tems I put in S tier are like definitely stronger. So I think I'm just gonna use yeah whatever. We'll make it. We'll make an A plus tier. It's just gonna make things easier. We'll just make that one the same color, so I don't have to change everything. Not going to make an A minus tier, it's just going to be A plus tier, which is basically Tems I would put in S tier, but technically they're just not that broken overpowered. So the reason Platimus is so strong is it's fast, has Toxin Shower, which can use its speed for insane evade, and spread damage. It has Rotten Goo, Aqua Bullet for good turn 1 stabs, and Aquatic Whirlwind for high damage priority. It's all around a great Tem, super good defensive typing, and good offensive coverage. Okay, next we have Lawali. So Lawali got backhanded in this last patch and a few stat buffs. But backhanded, I tried it out. It didn't feel that great. It was okay, but it's not quite a stall Tem, and you're not going to want to use that trait on an offensive team. I think Lawali needs a few more tools to be useful, but it's not like it's in a bad spot. I think Lawali would be a pretty good in B minus. It's just Eleanor, hello. Also, hello to you, Tico. Yeah, so Lawali's it's got support options. It's flexible. Most of the time, it's going to go botanist. It's got a really good typing for that. So I think B minus is a good spot for it. Absol, hello. Glad I was able to help. Oh, oh yeah, you guys can see chat. Perfect. Lowali's B plus. I no. If I was going by design, Lowali yeah would be higher, but Lowali's not that great. Tataru. Tataru's always just kind of been a stat stick. Once it gets its stats nerfed a little bit and Stone Ball removed from it, it's never quite been the same. It's still a decent turbo support, and Helldanger is a really strong move. It's able to get off relatively easy, but it's not. I guess it's okay on rage cores and such, but generally it's just kind of like a throw neutral stabs, and there's times that do that better right now. I guess in comparison to other neutrals, Tataru feels like it's below the curve a little bit. So I'd have to place it just below in the lower B minus tier. I got upset because you went against a former tournament champion, so it's kind of upsetting. Yeah, the TMR gap's really small, so you're gonna face a lot of top tiers, plus the community. Just, I would try not to get mad at that and just take it as a learning experience. Grunder's great in A tier. Toxic stacks are really popular. Almost every team has like 3 toxics right now. Grunder's defensive typing is good. Being a toxic that resists wind is amazing. The Paizo stamina buff helped it significantly, but that move was overpriced anyways. I mean, Grunder, Paralyzing Poison was also a good change for it a couple patches ago. Lots of people are using that. It's a great move to get it off, and Grunder has like insane special bulk, so you can invest like 500 HP, 200 defense, and the rest in like stamina attack, and it really just performs well in everything you want it to do. Plus, it counters Platimus and some other A tiers I'll get to later. So definitely way up there. Magma. So Magma, once again, it got some small buffs, mainly to its bulk. Uh, It's really good as a wall. One of the few Tems that's able to buff its own defense, special defense, and self heal, which is super valuable. It's just that it's basically just a wall. So I found that Magma really shines most when there's a meta and Tems that it specifically counters. So stuff like heavy nature metas, heavy melee or crystal metas, and just any of its resists is really solid. How long have I been doing competitive to know how to do builds? I've been playing Temtem competitive for almost 2 years now, and I was doing Pokemon competitive before that. So I've got a good run. Grunder, Schween's Horn, Tier S. I'm ignoring the bugged Tems right now, or the bugged items and stuff. Once Schweenhorn gets nerfed, I mean, Grunder's just gonna go back to being a really great A tier. Yeah, Magma, like it's Bruiser build with like show off Oshidashi and stuff is really it's okay. It's nice to have a fire melee, but one of the types it wants to hit is Earth, and it also takes super effective damage from that. It loses the Volphy matchup and can potentially go even in the Turok matchup, but that's just not fantastic. So it's basically its only use is on a stall team, but it is a solid wall for a stall team, I would say. Hello, Pharaoh. Welcome. Grandpa. Grandpa got a new trait this season. A bird season. But the damage on it is just, it's too low. Like 50%. If you can get like a neutralized combo off a 2-wire, or if you're hitting a Volar end, it actually is, it's an insane damage boost. 50% is nuts. Problem is, it's just, if you're hitting it and it's still resisted, you're only actually dealing 75%. So in the end, it's still like a monotype wind. I think a boost to Bird Season would help it significantly. It still has like synergy with Tataru and can be a Turbo Hypno support, which can be valuable. It's still really bulky too. It's just it always takes a stam item because of its low stamina. Its offensive capabilities just aren't fantastic. So many other wins do Grandpa's job better, but it's not like Grandpa in itself is useless. It's just kind of outclassed. All right, Amphitheater. Amphitheater got some minor stat buffs and also got Infectious as a trait swapped out for Settling. I would place this as a really solid B+. I think Amphitheater was one of the bigger winners of the patch. It's like Settling is a great change for it. Most of the time before with Amphitheater, you would end up just ignoring it because unless you can kill it on a double in, it's just going to heal the damage back from Relax and Spam Evasion, and it just was annoying to deal with. But now you can't just ignore it with Settling, or at least if it potentially has Settling. So at least even the threat of not having the knowledge of which trait it is can be pretty crazy. Other than that, I mean, just like this minor special attack buff and minor stam buff do help it out for sure. It's good to do a lot of meta stuff, and being the fastest Tem in the game with speed control, with Tesla Prison and Plague and options, it's a solid Tem overall. It's just slightly above average, though it does get walled fairly easily by all nature types, or just by nature in general. Madrid. I don't think Madrid got any direct changes this patch. I think 2 patches ago it got like a minor defense bulk buff, like +2 defense, +2 special defense or something that doesn't matter at all. I'm not sure why they do those kind of things, maybe just to round it out. Being 4 times weak to melee and also being weak to water and nature, 2 of the faster, more common types in the game, is really rough. I think if Adoraboros didn't have Inner Spirit, we might see some more Mudrids around. I know that's more of an Adoro problem than a Mudrid problem, but realistically, the only time you're going to be using Mudrid is on a fast Deluge team, and right now, slower Deluge teams just have more success. So Mudrid is just not really the go-to, unfortunately. So I have to place it in C tier. It could definitely use a little something, just not sure what that thing is right now. Taifu. I really haven't seen like any Taifus around. I don't think Taifu. So the problem with Taifu is if you want it to be an offensive Tem, like they've kind of wanted to turn it into with the leechery work, you would want to go natural conversion, but that actually takes damage away from leech. So I think natural conversion needs a buff. Honestly, I think it should just I think it should just be channeler, which is a 25% boost to all special attacks. I think that would help Taifu significantly. In its current state, it's basically got half stab on earth and wind type moves with a slightly better defensive type than Turok, but really it's just bad Turok. With like I don't know, I'm not really sure what Taifu wants to do. It feels like niche and everything and just doesn't know what it wants to do. I I I just think natural conversion needs a buff. Maybe even safe retreat. Safe retreat's not even that great as a stall trait. I think it should either proc multiple times and only give one tick of regen, or give 3 ticks of regen on the first time it swaps. Either way, I just think Taifu could need some buffs, so that's why I'm putting it in C tier. Whiplump. Whiplump really hasn't been changed a whole lot in this last patch. I don't think at all. It got Hyperkinetic Strike a patch or two ago, though, which was interesting. Now it can actually fire off strong wind-type moves every turn after the first. Problem is that electrics are pretty common, and like with Amphitheater getting buffed, stuff like Garunder around. Whiplump's just a little too squishy, I think. Its defensive typing of water wind isn't that great. Like it's really good for countering earths, but the thing is, one of the main earths in the game right now is Volphy, which plague hurts. So it's not that Whiplump's bad. It's just I just don't think this is the meta for it. It's really hard to find the space to swap Whiplump in to get its wind holds off, especially when there's 2 toxics on the board. But once it can, it's really solid. The other time you'll actually see Whiplump is on freeze cores. It's just the freeze cores aren't real popular right now. Stuff with like bait and camo on like every team. It is nicer now that bait's revealed, but until the bug of gears are actually revealed on the first turn the Tem's on the field, it'll still just be a little bit of a disadvantage. Scunch. I don't think Scunch got any changes. I know Slingshot got changed, and you could theoretically say that Scunch got buffed by that, but it didn't. It did not. I mean, Scunch is a P-Jabber, 4 times weak to mental. You can almost go in B minus. I feel like I'm putting a lot of Tems there. I feel like B minus is where the Tems are like, they're okay being in B tier, but really they could use some help. Scunch's only turn 1 options are basically Perfect Jab and Wrenching Massage. Like, I've seen it used really well on Wrenching Massage combos, but most of the time it's just going to be a P-Jab support for Quetzal teams. And like, it does have that niche, and I think it does that niche really well. It's just that that's the only thing it does. It's not a very flexible Tem. Whereas some of the other P-Jab users like Mashuk and even Ragnit just have a few more options. So, and I don't think it'll just kind of always be secondary to those Tems. I'm not sure what you could even give Scunch. It's actually got a really great moveset, especially with Haito. You know what? We're going to put it in B minus. Scunch has options. Savage Exhausts, Haito Sleep, P-Jab support. It's actually decent. It's just not great. It's slightly below average. Just slightly. So B minus is a good fit for it. Mooflank. Ooh. Mooflank, you can go to A tier. Not quite A+, but it's going to go A. Goring got a buff, but Mooflank was already strong. It got an attack buff a couple patches ago, which really helped it out. Mooflank has really low stamina moves, so it can have like a 4 or even a 5-turn rotation, and that's super valuable. Unless your opponent has marbles or exhausts, they basically have to kill Mooflank, because it's also got 2 really strong traits. Either Hurry Wart, it immediately becomes a problem, and with Goring off hold, Bestial Charge off hold, and Held Anger with 1 hold less. Super strong. And then also Unnoticed, where if you don't attack it, it's just going to scale speed. So you can invest a whole bunch more in bulk if you do that. Both are super strong, valuable traits on a Tem that's very strong. And like pure neutral is actually really good defensive typing. And Mooflank's HP and defense stats are really solid. It's just a special defense where it struggles. But you can kind of fix that with some TV invest. But yeah, overall Mooflank very solid, crazy good. Just not quite Platimus level. Rolder, yeah, I tried Rolder yesterday actually. Rolder's still very bulky, but now with reactive vial change from a long time ago, it just never really recovered. Rolder received so many nerfs because Drill Impact got nerfed, Goring got nerfed, and its stats got nerfed with reactive vial. Back with the meta after it was everywhere, and then since then, Stoneball got nerfed for Turok, which affected Rolder. Rockfall got changed around too, so it's only one turn to burn. It did get buffed in damage, but after Tardy Rush procced, being able to burn for 2 turns was super valuable with Rockfall. Um, Roller still has like Stampede, which is a good move, but it's just kind of hard to get off because it's 2 hold, low prio. And even then, the payoff is just kind of mediocre. Roller could use a little help, so I'm going to put it in C. Naga, the Tem that got the biggest change this patch by getting a complete rework to Decidora. Hello, Lightcube, welcome. Yeah, so Naga, Decidora got completely changed. So instead of flipping the entire speed of the game, it just flips priority. So a low priority move is high priority, and high priority moves low priority. I think that Nagais is still one of the Tems that's hasn't been fully experimented with yet. I think it's hard to give a solid opinion, so I'm gonna put it in B tier, which is like right in the middle, completely average. Nagais' defensive typing is trash. It really is bad, uh, but it does counter some top tier Tems just because of the priority flip. Priority is super valuable in games, and lots of people will end up banning Nagais just so that they can abuse their priority. And plus, Nagais has a crazy good speed stat, so you can outspeed a whole bunch of stuff and get like Hypnosis off for control. You have Psy Surge for your own priority under Decidora. I've ran into multiple Nagaises that have just completely ruined my teams. It's actually going to be. The thing is, the trait can work against you as well. So stuff like like Platimus using Rotten Goo will be super effective against Nagais, and it'll also be high prio without synergy. And stuff like Amphitheater jumping up in the meta means that a Thunder Strike will just outspeed and kill Nagais. So it's just stuff like that that's kind of holding Nagais back, I think. But like I said, it hasn't been experimented with enough yet. I haven't seen enough of them. I think Nagais has a ton of potential, but right now I'm just going to kind of place it in the middle. And like Water Custodian will always be niche. It's more, if you're using Nagais, most of the time it's going to be Decidora. It's not like to discount Water Custodian. It's just it's not as good as the other trait. I'm not gonna do Orphil and Tental here. I've used them before. They're fun Tems, but we're gonna keep it mainly full evolutions. Nidrasil. Nidrasil, I think, is too strong. Lots of people consider it the most well-balanced Tem in the game. I think it's above the curve, for sure. Being able to, so Poison Ticks just gives so much value, and Nidrasil is able to spread them like crazy. Having a good defensive type, completely walling nature and water types. The only thing holding Nidrasil back at all is the fact that it doesn't have a nature stab, but even then it does like all of its damage through toxic ticks, so it doesn't even matter. The only thing it really gets walled by is an opposing toxic. So while there are a lot of toxics in the meta that it can potentially get walled by, it still has use. You just target the Tem that's not toxic, you get off Bark Shields, you heal your ally with Spores, use Cooperation, even Hypnosis. Nidrasil has so many options. If you ignore it, it's always going to get value. I think, and I guess Triphytologist got buffed as well for 2 turns of Exhaust. I've seen people try it. It doesn't really feel that great. I tried it out too. It's just kind of you're still going to use try apothecary because that trait's too good. I think they could almost match them, or it's just 2 and 2 on apothecary, but maybe that would be too bad because then you would just use toxic ink for the toxic ticks instead of spores on your opponent. Hard to say. Maybe just a minor bulk nerf did. I'm not sure, but either way, it's crazy good. Basically the best healing support in the game, and offering toxic ticks as well. Capire received like an additional 10. Capire's gotten like 30 base stats total increase over the last 3 patches. Oh, it's actually kind of nuts how many stats it's got. But at the same time, they actually took some damage away from Last Rush this time, which is a bit of a weird change to me. Not only did they remove Last Rush from Grandpa, but they also kind of hurt Capire specifically with the Last Rush nerf. I Capire has always been in a rough spot for multiple reasons. Like it gets walled by every other fire type. I know base jump is okay as a coverage move, but it's really not good. It doesn't feel good to click base jump. If you base jump into a Tolkien, you're going to do like 30%. It's a 4-hit KO against a town that doesn't usually even have a lot of HP invest. It's interesting that it has heat up, but there's less and less ways to get turn 1 setup now. The main one is Shellland, and there's just better recipients of Welcomer. There's also the problem of there's not a lot of fast neutrals to pair well with it. Capire's best partner is Mooflank, but if Mooflank gets banned, then Capire doesn't have a great partner. I think it's almost like they tried to make Neutral Quation acceptable partner for it, but it just will never be. So, yeah, I think Capire's still got to go in D tier. It's not even that Capire can't be used. It's just it really gets outclassed, and it needs something that's not base stats to supplement it. Zenarith. I don't think Zenarith really got any changes this patch, besides a minor buff to knockback. Zenarith's pretty much average. It's like the strongest Crystal Spiker in the game. Channeler is a crazy good trait. But the problem with being a mono crystal type is you get walled by fires and earths. It does have knockback, which can kind of supplement that, which is really nice. But at the same time, you're not going to want to stay in front of a Tolkien and just eat a fiery soul just to get a knockback off. You'd also get burned that way. Stuff like Volfi also walls you with its high special defense. Even a knockback to that would probably not even do half. Zeno's a real example of a well-balanced Tem. I think they gave Zeno too much bulk. Zeno has the highest bulk stat in the game now. Or highest base stat total. But overall, yeah, I would say Zeno is one of the better balanced Tems in the game. It has 2 interesting usable traits. Wrecked Farewell is actually pretty cool now. I liked it before, but I have to admit it has more use cases afterwards. And offensively, it's still it's really great with Deluge teams. When I was saying how you're not going to use Mudred on a Deluge team, Zenarith I think you would use. And it can scale with Madness buff. It has options. I think it fits in B tier. Auhi. Aohai. Somewhere B or B minus. I kind of torn here. It's probably also B tier. So Auhi has a crack trait with Ignis Fatuus. Being able to get evasion makes it one of the best cleaners in the game. It really punishes your opponent for swapping out low health Tems because it can just they can't hit an Auhi late game unless they outspeed it, which that's pretty tough to do because Auhi's a fairly fast Tem and it really likes Prio. It has perfect coverage with its fire mental typing. Sleep options with Jinx Whisper and Hypnosis. it falls short where its strongest moves are using its physical attack stat, which is far weaker than its special attack stat. And while I try and use its special set quite often, in the end it's just kind of like a goofy support, burn support with special defense drops, options, and sleep. I don't know. For the most part, you're gonna want other fires, and you're gonna want other mentals. But if you do want a combination, it's not like Aohi's bad. I think Aohi's in a fine spot. If it needed anything, I would say it should get a two-hold special nuke. Like basically Gamma Burst, but on two-hold. I think that would help Aohi quite a bit. Because its special set really only has 3 move slots it needs to use, and the last one is kind of free, but there's nothing that it wants to put there. And the physical set's fine. And Warm Gift is okay too. It's just, I would say Warm Gift's the lesser used trait, not nearly as good. Uh, Zorain, hello, welcome. F NATO Aohi, please no. Babua is kind of in a rough spot right now just because of the Schweinshorn bug, but after that gets fixed, I would say it's another B tier. So Babua is actually really good. Now that it has Schweinshorn Toxic Slime for a turn 1 option. But like between the Toxic Slime, Schweinshorn, and Water Cutting Lily, it has turn 1 great options for stab for both of its types. Exquell is a crazy good defensive typing, and a good trait in Mucus. Problem is that there's toxics everywhere. Like there's going to be like 2, 3, even 4 toxics on every team you face. That while they may not one-shot Babua, they get completely walled by it. So it's like, if you can get Babua into a situation where there's no toxics on the board, it can pop off. But it's not. It's just hard to run right now because there's so many toxics, and it just can't touch like any of them. Kapire D unfollowing. I'm sorry about that. It's look, man, I think Kapire should get something fun. I just don't think that 30 base stats are gonna do anything for it. Oh wait, they haven't. Obi, I love Obi. I place Obi in B plus. So Obi's just a great support. Whether it's target rep for just a full evasion team, or source rep for like a combo with Shellland and also bush options. You got burn with plasma beam. You have Tesla prison for speed control. It's one of the best reset users. Resets are a super valuable move. It's not crazy. Like the damage output is not a whole lot, and its bulk and defensive typing are mediocre at best. So I can't put it any higher than B plus, but I'd say B plus is a good fit for it. Babua C or D? No, Babua is not bad. Babua is a great Tem. It's just that there's so many toxics. It's to see how right Cerneef. I'll get there eventually. Saku. Um, that's kind of tough. Can I have like a B plus minus? Saku's about average too. Saku, they threw a whole bunch of more base stats at Saku to kind of compensate for the fact that it lost Bark Shield, which was its best stall option. I like Saku. Its typing is good. It's able to like completely wall Volfi and Oshiara, 2 of the more meta Tems. It has reliable healing with Lifeful Sap, 2 offensive good stabs. I can also wall Turok. That's another big one. It's just that it's so slow. Like its best win moves are priority with Boomerang and Turbine, but really they're not gonna be that fast. Also, all the toxics around still. Like it loses the Garundir matchup, and it usually loses the Platimus one as well. And also Tolkien. So it's just kind of like Saku is really good against half the Tems in the meta, and really useless against the other half. So once again, it kind of falls in like an average spot. But I mean, Petal Dagger was kind of nice having a turn 1 nature option for it. It's a good like holder of energy drink, so you can have narco hit for coverage. But narco hit's not even that great because neutrals and melees aren't all that common. Um, but I mean, like Saku's, yeah, I'd say just B tier is good. Obi's your favorite time of the patch? Yeah, Obi's fun. No matter how you play it, it's fun, I think. Flash. I'm just gonna put him B minus for now while I think about it some more. So Valash, it's kind of been suffering ever since the Jack of all trades nerf. It's its scavenger stat is basically max like a high special attack stat with madness buff, and you try and get scavengers to heal off the damage from madness buff, or you just try and heal up any damage you take anyways. But the problem is you're basically just a mono crystal at that point, which is pretty much the same as Zenarith. The difference is you have like Ninja Jutsu as a coverage move and also higher priority. It's just kind of like how would you like your stats shifted around. Jack of all trades, I Jack of all trades just scales too slowly to really be useful. And Crystal as a defensive typing isn't one you really want to have right now. It's okay against the Toxics, but you're not really taking damage from the Toxics. It's more like you're taking ticks from them. And Vlash has nothing to really supplement that. Obi's so no skill. It's fun to use, but matchup dependent. If you're playing against a slower team, you hard counter. I don't think Obi's bad against faster teams because Tesla Prison, but I can definitely see it. Alhi. So Alhi was got a lot of changes. I think it got some more bulk buffs. It got telekinetic shrapnel added to its move pool, and it got determined change for Fuhrer. Which the last one, like it doesn't need Fuhrer. It's a bad trade on it. Determined wasn't fantastic, but it was better than that. It's not like Alhi's bad. It's just so the biggest thing with a lot of the wind types in this game is that they're competing with other winds. Something like Tolkien and Turok are going to be the top tier winds for the most part. Alhi is D, no shot is B. If Kapire is D, no one is using it and it's still bad. Did you see how J Dragon was using it in the grand finals of the Ameri Regional though? I I don't think Alhi's like crazy good, but it does like an Oshidashi with Bruiser hurts super bad. Having priority options with Turbine, it's it's got good physical bulk. It's just kind of weaker on the special side. It's I guess I could put it in B minus. Like the telekinetic shrapnel didn't do anything for it. Fury didn't do anything with it. It's just the more base stats they throw at it, the more it's going to be used. It's another P-Jab option, kind of right with Scunch. It just has a different defensive typing and coverage options. Uh, you don't know if you can trust Lulu and Shirk Screams after last journey. Yeah, it's not great. Alhi's not great. It's not like super splashable. It's nice. I don't know. I just I we'll leave it in B minus. Maybe I don't know. It could go in C even because I think Alhi needs something else. I don't think what it got was really helping it at all. it's it just didn't help it. Uh, because like I tried it out and it basically felt the same as it did pre-patch. Like Alhi's not a bad tem. Like Oshidashi and Turbine are good moves. It's got strong offensive stats. It's just why would you use Alhi? I really can't justify using it much at all. Alhi losing Boomerang was a huge nerf, needed the extra move slot. You know what? Yeah, that's completely fair. I tried running it without FGAT and just Turbine, and it still worked okay, but it's just less safe that way. I'll go Barnshee now. Barnshee also received some bulk buffs. I know some people are still experimenting with it. It seems pretty solid. Barnsey. Mm, see, Barnsey having higher special defense makes it better against stuff like Platamus, Oshiara, and Volfi, and one of the even like Tolkien, and the bigger physical threat, which is Turok, is completely walled by it. So I think Barnsey is going to be better than Owlhe, but I don't think it's crazy by any means. I would maybe put it probably between BB minus somewhere. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, just because I think it still has potential and more use cases. I just haven't seen them all yet. It's fast. It has stuff like Gamma Burst and Tornado. It does pretty much force you to use Fake Beard on it, which kind of sucks. Um, it has even like support options with Bamboozle. I don't think most people are gonna spare the spot on it though, the move slot. I think Barchi's kind of solid now though. I don't even know if it needed the bulk buffs, but it does help it to actually swap in. Also, Time Split. I can't believe I forgot Time Split. Time Split's such a crazy good move, and Barnshee is one of the only two Tems in the game that has it now. Gyalis. Gyalis, I don't think will ever fall below like a B plus tier. Its defensive typing is really good. Its its attack stats good. HP stat, speed stat. It's kind of like a one of the best min max Tems in the game. Uh, it has crazy good coverage with hook kick and crystal bite. Priority with sharp stabs. It's just that it kind of lacks a turn one. You almost have to swap it in, but with its defensive type chart, you can definitely get it for free. Gallus up to A. I suppose, yeah, I would say that the reason I would put Gallus in A is because it's a crystal that, with resistant, you can kind of avoid the toxic ticks, which can be important in this meta with all the toxics. Um, Being able to hit a Doro without getting toxic skin is still valuable, though I don't know how many Adoras are going to stay in front of a Gallus. Also, stuff like Exhaust is kind of popular. It's the best crystal in your opinion. I think Chimerian and Tuvine are probably on par with it. Like Gallus, yeah, Gallus is still super solid. It's not like ever since I lost Helicopter Kick, it's not crazy good. And being a melee that's weak to Volfi does hurt it. If it gets chipped down too much, it can die to a Sledge Gift before getting a hook kick off. That's kind of why I was thinking of putting it in B plus. But we'll put it in A. Mix Mix is probably a B minus. Mix kind of has a niche. It's just a niche that's not really popular anymore, and that being like punishing your opponent for not using spread moves. Mix is now borderline like matchup fishing. If your opponent only runs like two spread moves on their team and you're able to ban one in pick ban and get Mix through, all you have to do is have a bulky enough team, get Mix and Puppet Master, and all of a sudden you can just refresh spam until you can one shot your opponent's entire team. The problem is that spread moves are some of the strongest ones in the game right now. Like stuff like Denigrate, Binary Flood, Outgrowth. Not that you see a whole lot of Tyrannax right now, but Cerbatios. You sometimes even see like Volfies with Sandstorm, stuff like Toxin Shower, even Bestial. There's just so many good spread moves right now that Mix is hard to justify. But it's like on a team when you're facing a team that doesn't have enough spread moves, Mix is the best possible tem you could slot in. It's just hard to find that opponent. Riken. Riken didn't get anything this patch, right? I don't think so. Probably just in C2. Riken's gotten punished for so many other Tems. Like the Rush nerf. I feel like the Rush nerf is mainly directed towards Gorong, but that hurt Riken pretty bad. I guess that's kind of the main one. Riken kind of has the same problem with Kapire, just being a mono fire. At least Riken has Haldanger, and it does apply a lot of pressure. If your Tems get low, like Riken's a crazy good cleaner, kind of the same thing as Auhi. It's just like if you're facing another fire or just a fire resist in general, it's not going to do a whole lot. And you pretty much it's having synergy tied to or priority tied to synergy is always difficult, and that's what the Quetzalcoatl and Lava Wave users all struggle with against the Fiery Soul. I guess I'll put it in B minus. Like Raiken is super tanky and it's always a threat. You can't leave a low health Tem in front of a Raiken unless you have a solid way to deal with it. So that's kind of where I'm gonna leave it. Pookie. Okay. Piranha. Piranha got some more bulk buffs. It's HP, special defense. I think both got buffed. I know what special defense did for sure. Um, but I mean, it didn't gain any new tools. Like the energy reserve sets has the same issues as last time, or that it's had for the whole time, where it's you're relying completely on your opponent to proc it, and so you end up running out of stamina, or you just get ignored. Um, I've seen it used really well on stallier teams with ultrasound. I would say that's its best niche right now. I actually really struggle into it, and being a revitalized user that's not nature is helpful. Problem is that it's okay. There's too many toxics for it to be real great. I love Piranha. I want to put it higher. It's only I. It's tough. It's usable in stall teams, and I think it's a decent option in stall teams. It's probably your best stall water tem. Problem is like stall's not crazy good, so it's just bad. And everyone's saying to put in D. After they put Hopeless Tonic into being seen, it's dead. Put Piranha in B or B minus. E is good in stall. I know it's good. No, We'll just put it in C. That's where I was gonna put it in the first place. He's tough. Like Fluid Barrier is a really valuable move, and ultrasounds with marbles, kind of like stamina stall, is really punishing. It's just that in general, it's really tough to use, and it definitely needs something. Like Piranha has a ton of stats. It's not unusable. You can use it better than Kapire, which I guess is my comparison right now. Kapire really doesn't have any teams where it really does well on. Piranha at least does well on stall. Scaravolts. Scaravolt's actually pretty solid. It's not crazy good. Ever since half full went back up to 2 stages of special attack, it's always been a really good option. Its defensive type chart's super good. Problem is there's still 2 Earths in the game, but it really punishes your opponent for not leading with an Earth. And then also Good Friend's always a really good support trait. Now it also got Embers like a couple patches ago too, so it has a turn 1 fire move if it wants to. And with the +2 attack from half full, it's not even that weak. It does actually hurt. I can't put it any higher than B though, just because there's too many Earths around. And also because it can get Toxic ticked down pretty easily. Like reducing your own HP when you really want HP to manage against the Toxics is kind of rough. Well, if you better be S when it practically warps team building. I don't. For me, it's like I always have to think about Volfi for sure, but I can't say that I actually build around it. I still throw stuff like Gario on my team. It's not like I can just be entirely afraid of it. I like to always have at least one melee on the team to deal with it, or at least a couple natures. I, I don't think it's just Volfi is really flexible and strong, but I don't think it's S tier. It'll go in A plus. It'll go in A plus, but it's just not S. And yeah, like you, Pookie's probably going to be the only S. but there's going to be a few in A+. Hedgen. Hedgen's A tier. Super solid. Got to go fast is still is a really good trait. Has a few options. Like nowadays, you can run Hedgen either as just the typical attacker with harmful binary flood, hellfire, fire tornado, but you can also run it with generify instead of probably hellfire next to like a move flank, which gives you a really strong lead. It's a really good combo on aggressive teams. And just like, Digital is such a strong type, and being that as fast as Hedgen is very helpful. Osakai. Mm, I don't know. Like Osakai has inner spirit now, but I mean it's kind of just like a team check. It still doesn't have enough speed. I think there needs to be a move that's kind of like Hook that raises speed by one stage. It's just like a weak attack that doesn't have prio. I was thinking just like a base 60 physical attack, maybe neutral type that raises speed by one stage. Give it to all the Tems that ran Slingshot before. Ta-da. They could even still run new Slingshot with that. But it's just so Osakai will just run through slower teams, but its defensive type chart is just so weak it'll die to so many fast teams. It's I can't justify it. Reactive Vial helps a little bit, and the special defense buff it got helps just a little bit, but none of them help enough. I just don't think it helps enough. And the body stretch build is interesting though, but it's also probably around B- tier. Defensive type chart once again kind of hurts. It has ways to buff its defense, but not its special defense, so it'll always be vulnerable that way. Saipat. Disclaimer: Schween's Horn is broken, which is Saipat's best item, so it cannot be run. So if I was to place Saipat right now and the current state of the game, D tier. But Schween's Horn is getting fixed sometime in 1.5.1. So once it does, I would argue for A tier, but it's probably safer to put in B+ tier. Like Schween's Horn Nox Bomb from Saipat is super strong. Being able to outspeed Hedgens with a priority water move and one-shot it is very valuable. Nitro Sai super strong, 110 base power move. Prio, Shinobi Tactics is valuable. There's also the whole amphibian strat with Saipat that's super good. It's actually one of my favorite Tems. I think it's really solid just all around. It has other flexible options too, like Ninjutsu, Rage, even freeze options with Ice Shuriken. It's just that right now you can't really run it because of the bug with Schween's Horn. So, but also like it kind of struggles against stuff like Platamus and the other Toxics, and its defensive type chart is awful. It's got like 4 or 5 weaknesses, so can't put it any higher than B+. But I think it's a really well balanced and solid Tem. Drakash. Drakash got Dust Vortex, which is what everyone was asking for the longest time. And it still feels a little below average. Just having so many weaknesses with that typing kind of sucks. And it's like Drakash is fast, but it's not fast enough to outspeed what it wants to. With Oshiara and Platamus able to outspeed it with their priority options, and then like stuff like Volfi and Turok walling it as well, and hitting it super effective. Drakash kind of struggles to shine. It has found some use on Digi teams though that just accept a water weakness. It's kind of used as a way to counter electrics, from what I've noticed. But in general, like you're not gonna throw Drakash on a whole lot of teams. But it's not even great on Hellfire cores anymore because Hellfire just isn't worth team building around much. Still hard to justify Drakash when there's other fires available. Tortnite kind of got like adjusted, I think they called it, where confined as a trait got nerfed pretty bad. So it's only It's only one stage of both defense and special defense instead of two. But at the same time, it got pretty significant bulk buffs. So effectively, its confined set is now like D tier. Maybe C tier. I don't know. So confined, I guess, I heard it explained where it doesn't really matter if it confined gives +1 instead of +2 to its defensive stats, because essentially what you're doing is you're swapping Torrid Knight in and threatening to cage your opponents in on a disadvantageous board, which it doesn't really matter what that how much stats the confined gives, because you're trapping your opponents on a crappy board. But I actually still like efficient anyways, so I don't think Torrid Knight's crazy good. I would say it's about average right now. I've been seeing it used quite a bit. It's another bulky Crystal Deluge option, and I think it's decent with Nagais, but I guess it kind of works against it. So Rotten Goo works with it, but Crystal Spikes works against it. It also counters Nagais, I guess, if you were to run into it, but there's just not that many around. What it also completely does is wall toxics. Stuff like Garunder, Platamus, Nidrasil. Torrid Knight just walls them. Can't be poisoned. 4x resist on toxic, and it can hit them back, which is valuable. So yeah, I mean, I think Torrid Knight's pretty solid, but nothing crazy at all. Inky. Get farmed by a Rat Shook Acra, though. Yeah, that's why I'm not putting it any higher. It's not like its defensive type chart is awful. It's super good against some, and then super garbage against others. So I guess it wins against the like bulkier toxic cores, and I guess Platamus, but loses against the faster ones. I don't know. Inky, I don't think it quite breaks into A tier just because that Earth weakness is really glaring. And Inky is more or less supplemented by a Welcomer strength. But I mean, like, Inky is just a super strong nuker with Spec Master. Fizz Master I always kind of discount. It just never seems to be as good. Trying to get your Inky to survive 2 turns to even get its holds off as good as moves just isn't as good as just straight up 107 BP with Spec Master. Being able to do like 50% of a Turok's health when it's one of the main counters to it in the meta is good. And the bulk buff actually helps it live Crystal Spikes without any defensive investment, which really doesn't matter much. But it did just get like +2 defense, +2 special defense. You guys don't like Lawali so low? I don't know. Lawali feels bad. It's just, why would you use Lawali over other wins? Like, backhanded really didn't do anything for it. It's biggest thing you would run Lawali for is, I guess it counters quite a few things. I think nature in general does right now. This Hypoxia is a bit weak. Turbo option. I think that's just going to have to be one we have to agree to disagree on. I think Lawali is just a bit subpar right now. Not that it's bad. It's just slightly below the curve, I think. Yeah, Shellnet though. That's the next one. I definitely put that in A tier. I see Shellnets on like over half the teams I face now. It's basically Welcomer is the best way to create space turn 1. Being on blue side and first picking Shellnet gives you the most flexible lead possible. And even in general, Shellnet's a pretty solid support now with options with Haito, Kesugatame, and like Zen Med or Cheer Up even. And solid damage output with Sensei Robe, like Soul Shouts and Inner Spirits if it wants. Being able to counter Volfies is nice, and being pure melee as a defensive typing is actually probably better than most split typings because you only have to worry about like Digimental. And even then you just lead it with your Inky and then all of a sudden it's really a tough lead to break through. I think the main reason why it rose wasn't even specifically due to Haito, even though that was a very useful addition. I think it's more like the nerfs to Nagase and changes to Moala. Because now the other ways to create space turn one in the game are just kind of gone, and Shaolin's the only one remaining. Shaolin size boards and wreck cheer up into having wreck every turn. It's kind of, I haven't seen that yet, but that is funny and scary. Please don't make me think about that. uh, Cycrox. I mean, Cycrox is still just a Doombot. It's like Neurotoxins is 4 turns. It's, I mean, it's got Strangle, Reactivile. Like, if you want a Doomtem, you're gonna go with Cycrox probably. Uh, it's just that it doesn't really do anything else. You get one Doom off, and potentially a second if you're type stacking or like weakness stacking enough to have Digi-Threat. I think Neurotoxins just needs a rework, and Cycrox needs its identity changed. Personally, I don't. It's not doing anything special right now. One of the paralyzing poison users. I guess that's true, but like, are you really going to use Cycrox over the other toxic options right now? Like, you're always like, if you want paralyzing poison, you're going to Slacker under. And I mean, you're what's even the other time that gets paralyzing poison that you're talking about? I can't think of it offhand. Moala? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I don't know. I don't I think it's a funny strategy. I don't think it's super viable. I mean, Cycrox does this job really well. It's just that a singular 4 turn Doom isn't super great. And like I said, I just think it needs a rework, identity change or something. Cycrox is just kind of lame right now. Definitely worth it on Mao. Transient turn 2 to get. Yeah, yep. I was running like double gas transient, paralyzing poison, Zen med on my Mao. Because being able to have either paralyzing or Zen med seems super valuable, but I don't know. I didn't experiment with that much. You guys have probably done more. Pocus. We're seeing quite a few Pocuses right now on Galios teams. Slowdown for turn 1 sleeps is really strong. Um, but I mean, other than that, Pocus is kind of mediocre. It's monotype mental raid boss on stall teams, or it's like max speed just for slowdown shenanigans, which it does this job fine. I don't think Pocus really needs any changes. It'll see use on some teams, and it won't see use on others. I think it's a solid monumental that's different enough from Sanby. I think it's in a good spot, but not crazy. Pocus goes in the Fisher tier. If I had a Fisher tier, we'd put 75% of these Tems in there. All right. Golzy. I haven't seen a lot of Sparkling Bullet Slingshot Golzies because you still kind of want Adrenaline Shot for hasty value. I'm really not sure where to put Golzy. I feel like I could almost go B plus. Probably B plus. It's nice because a max speed Golzy outspeeds Inky. Golzy is able to speed Typlotamus at least. Why is Pookie S tier? It's just a joke. Pookie's my mascot, so sorry to confuse you. Let me rephrase it. There we go, Pookie tier. So it's not S tier. Pookie's in the bottom 3 Tems and base stats. I think it's just behind Mintal and Obi. Yeah, Golzy. I mean, Golzy is able to hit most of the Tems. It's most of the types it's weak to for super effective. which is really interesting, if not all of them actually. So it's more of just a matter of your challenging speeds, but Goldie does a pretty good job of that. I don't know. It's like Goldie's solid. It could maybe go down to B, but I don't think it needs to. Is there a Tem with a single SV being as low as Pookie's special defense? Gulder. Gulder's speed is also base 10, but that's the only other one. I think there's. I think Obi HP is like 12 or 14 or something, and Paharo stamina is like 16, but none of them quite as low. Mashuk. Mashuk's A tier. Tireless is a really strong trait, and also having turbo choreography as a support option, or just to gain speed, is really strong. Wastewater is a strong point, toxic stab. You have option between like uppercut or helicopter kick for a melee move. Perfect jab for supporting physical teams and also setting up for a second turn. And it's just really good defensive typing for the most part. It's a little weak to winds, but it can smack Turok back, and paired it pairs well with winds. So not only do you have pivots defensively, but you can also get synergy turbos. I just like Mashuk is just overall a really solid Tem. One of the better ones right now. Bastion. Probably B minus. Bastion. Fire water is a cool type, but the problem is you're pretty much walled by water types. The issue with Lava Wave I mentioned earlier, with your synergy or your priority being tied to a synergy, kind of sucks, which is Lava Wave. You can go Solidifier for Water Blade, which is nice for coverage and to have a turn one water move. But then you're missing out on the huge damage boost from Pyromaniac. I think I'll still see use on stuff like fishing aggro teams, the Nature Koish, Baboa. Just try and kill you and hope you have no toxics teams. But like now with all the toxics in the meta, Bastion's got to be a bit lower. So yeah, it's also kind of slow. Even with Prio, you'd have to have speed invest to outspeed a lot of things. Ukama. I don't think Ukama's bad. Problem is that Ukama, for the most part, it's hard to justify running Ukama when you have options of either Oshiara or Platamus right now. So it's more like in comparison, Ukama suffers, but standalone is not bad. It's pretty much just a standard speedy special water type. I know like Oshiara and Ukama are different enough, but I think Platamus and Ukama are maybe just a little too similar. It's basically, but Ukama does pair well with Toxics. It's just you'd rather have the coverage of being able to hit Toxic as well as the evasion that Platamus offers. So yeah, that's why Ukama's in B. It's basically more of a comparison thing than an issue with Ukama itself. Ragnits. Kinetic transfer got reworked this patch. It was one of the cooler changes, but the problem is that Ragna is built to be a support from like any way you look at it. It has so many good support moves. Like Ragna has every move it could possibly want, really, to be a high performing support. Problem is mono electric isn't a great type. It's like trait options, like kinetic transfer is more like if you're trying to put it in like an offensive carry position, and if you don't have an electric weakness, electric custodian isn't going to be doing a whole lot for you. You'd almost rather run Volgon, which has better support traits and still able to buff up with like beef up or provide stare or strangle content or control. But I mean, Ragnar's not bad. It's still an option. It's got like fast hypno. It's got a bit of coverage with Turbine. You even got composure if you really need a stat wipe. I just I don't see a whole lot of great use out of Ragnet. Now that Nagase or Decidor got reworked, one of the better things it was used for being like a counter to Nagase with a low prio Electro Punch. It doesn't really have that anymore. No, D tier for Fire, yeah. I think the thing's actually a goat, but kind of looks like a dog, I guess, if you don't know any better. Size Munch. I can't put Size Munch in B plus right now. There's just too many counters to it around. There's, with all the mentals, with sleep control and stuff. Once Psypat's back in the meta, I think Size Munch will kind of any use it does have will phase out a little bit. It's still like it has the synergy with Shadowlance for heat up into a synergy wreck. Not that you really want to type stack on a melee board. You Wolfie can completely avoid wreck. Nowadays, side munches are running Martial Strike to have some priority melee move, which is really interesting. I actually saw an Earthwave size munch yesterday when paired with Nagase, which was super interesting. I wonder if that could have some secret tech use. But I think in general, like size munch has use. It does what it does, but it's not gonna be used on a whole lot of teams. You probably still want it on most melee cores, but that's about it. Zyzer piercing wheel got buffed to very high prio, which is interesting. I think it's and Petrify got buffed, so we're kind of like reworked. So it actually overexerts the opponent for a turn, which is actually really nice because Zyzer did not have a great fourth move slot. You pretty much ran Stone Ball, Rockfall, Piercing Wheel, and then the last one usually went to like clinch, so you had some coverage. Zyzer been OP, Petrify is just not playable. Is it that bad still? I guess I haven't experimented with it too much, but every time I did throw it on a Tem, I almost never clicked it. So I mean, it's really good on defense drop teams. I think that's kind of where its niche falls. And if not, then like the rested iron coating 2-wire combo is still crazy good. Quicksand's infinitely better. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I guess when you're running winds next to it, it does help. Being a mono earth does kind of hurt it. It does have nice options. I can't really put it higher than B minus though. I think it's still slightly below the curve. It's not bad. It has its uses. Like I'll still see Zyzers around. It's just not super common. Can't really click one prio after staying in 2 turns in a row. Yeah, it's bulky, but it's not crazy bulky. Special defense still is just a bit low. Gorong. I don't like Gorong. People have found success with it, but I would put it in like C tier. Ever since Rush got nerfed, its only viable trait, which is Tireless, because Seismic sucks. Tireless is just slightly less useful. Like it's still once again it's a min max Tem. It has like 0 special attack, but all of its bulk stats and attack are pretty crazy. And it's like you can just click show off turn 1, sure. It's not like you're really clicking a whole lot of other moves. You pretty much run hook kick, uppercut, helicopter kick. You could even drop hook kick or wow, uppercut if you want to, but I think hitting Wolfies is valuable. I just like right now if you're running a mono melee, You probably want to run Shallant. I guess Gorong's kind of like a bulky team option. It's not like you can just ignore a Gorong. It's not like melee has a whole bunch of resists in the game. It resists itself, or it's resisted by itself and also resisted by mental. It does get chipped down by toxic ticks, which are pretty popular. It's pretty slow with no prio options outside of Rush being ultra prio. I don't know. I just struggle to see Gorong doing super well here. I haven't seen it do super well ever since Rush got nerfed, so I have to put it in C. Also, I should have mentioned also it takes 3 turns for Gorong to proc tireless, even with scuff stamina, unless you use wrenching massage or some other form of like exhaust or marbles for stamina loss, which also sucks. Sanby, Sanby, I think is the premier bulky mental type. Like once Gallios gets changed around a bit. Trying to think if I'm gonna take that back. I guess there's still a Doro. Yeah. I I like Sambi a lot though. It has some really cool support options on top of like an insane attack stat as well as matter teleport and transient echo as a priority option. I mean, it's got stuff like hypno, rush, cage, beef up, which are all good and useful. It's got really crazy bulk. It can live a super effective attack pretty healthily. But it's not like it does anything really special. It's just kind of like a strong, bulky mental attacker. But sometimes that's exactly what you want. Dozing hit's also nice if you're ever to face neutral stacks, and it's even useful against like the more popular melees and neutrals in the meta because you can put them to sleep for a turn. Momo. Momo's also probably an A tier, right with Mooflank. Knockback got buffed for some reason. Couldn't tell you why. Momo just picks on slow teams really. It kind of got nerfed with the nut bar changes. Momo really loved old nut bar, but now I think people are just trying out other items on it. I was running res badge and just the damage increases super good. Also, I saw like a double screen. I saw some people still trying nut bar. It's like Momo's board sustain is just a bit worse than before, but either way, you can still make it pretty bulky, and it still hits insanely hard with Stabmaster. It's just a question of how much speed you invest in it, if any. Because if you can get away with investing like no speed, and you outspeed stuff like a Turok using normal prio, you can deal like almost this entire health bar with knockback, which is super valuable. Karen, one of the Tims that got changed the most, along with like Naga, because Karen got changed to be a special attacker. Attack stats were just straight up flipped. Um, well, I'm gonna put Karen in B plus tier. That's not because Karen in general is good, but because among like stall teams, Karen is like the best option. Being able to have Stonewall or Roar support, being able to one of the few times that can Doom without much problem with Psychosis. And now it has like the biggest change between Karen going from physical to special is the fact that it can use Soil Steam for relatively the same damage but cheaper stamina. Because stamina was one of the issues that Karen had, and I think it even got a small buff to its stamina and maybe another stat, which I don't think it needed. I think that Karen on stall teams is already kind of a menace. Scavenger for heals. Skull Helmet got buffed too. I tried that a little bit. It's it's almost like they put that there to encourage putting Mom's Lunch on a different tem on a stall team, so that you can bring it in and Karen won't get exhausted, or maybe like so you don't get exhausted from plagues. But in general, I don't think that tech's gonna be really useful. But it's kind of a nice little addition. I'm sure the stall players will It'll come into play when we face them at some points. But yeah, I think Coward's just really solid on stall teams. By far the best option on them. Like if you're building a stall team, I have to imagine you're starting with Coward always. But like in general, like I don't think it getting Sledge Gift or different offensive options helped it at all. I like maybe there's some potential with like a Scavenger offensive Coward, but the problem is that it's competing with the other Earths of Turok and Volfi, both of which it loses to by being a pure Earth type. So it's hard to justify right now, and anything other than a stall team. But stall team, it's like top tier. So that's why it's kind of B plus. Like in among everything else, it's not the greatest, but it's top tier at what it does, where it wants to be. Surnif. Building blocks change hurts Surnif pretty bad. So did the sweatband nerf actually. I feel like it's a bit hard to justify a Surnif on teams nowadays. It always used to be a time that was just like, all right, Surnif, you're gonna sit on this board and do nothing for like 20 turns while settling stacks up, and maybe you'll buff yourself with like Shy Shield, you'll heal with Revitalize and Bush. But now, like, it still does that, but the problem is, like, it gets less value from doing nothing. Uh, the single regen tick from building blocks is a joke. That item needs a bigger rework. Like, you're never going to use that ever. Settling is a good trait. It does get value if Surnif is ignored. Surnif is more or less like it's hard to play Surnif when there's so many toxics around too. It feels a bit low tempo. You can maybe run some shenanigans with like Frond Whip with Nagase. I don't know why you would really want to do that. I feel like that's kind of opposite game plans, where Nagase is more something you want on an offensive team, and Surnif is something you want on a bulkier team. You don't like that placement, like you? I, I maybe it could go up to B minus. I Surnif isn't in a great spot right now. Surnif isn't a stall Tim. It doesn't rely on sweatband. You put fake beard on it instead then. You can try running it as just a water cutting lily. Like its attack stats like garbage though. And if you don't have full bulk in it, it actually dies to a couple super effective or special attacking hits. Having settling on a town with such amazing sustain is very strong in your opinion. I, f- I feel like being mono nature is just a bit too big of a hit for it. Gaia is amazing for the stamina problem. But then you're forced to click Gaia every like 3 turns then, or else you OX, which also kind of feels bad. I'm putting Surnif in C because it starts with C. I mean, because I think it needs a little bit of help. I just, I think Cern could use a little something. That's not stats. Like it would be. I'm not sure what it would need though. Like it has a little bit of coverage, but double kick is. It can 1v1 stuff like Platamus. I mean, it's gonna take like a rot or a toxin shower first, and then you're burning like 2 water cutting lilies, which is over half your stam to even try and hit the Platamus once. And if it just swaps to a resist, it's kind of wasted. And you chunked for your health, so I can see potential. I think it's just a bit rough right now. I can definitely be proved wrong though. I just haven't seen Cernif used very well this patch. It's just less threatening, and without a reliable way to raise its defenses with building blocks, I don't think it's as big of a threat. I just don't. I'm also putting Nox in C. Nox just gets outclassed by like every other toxic. It's interesting as like a turbo hypno support. That's a different typing than wind. But most of the time you can ignore Nox. so that you don't proc Toxic Skin or Trance. And I was punished by that a little bit earlier on in the season when I was just kind of experimenting with teams. But losing to all the wins in the meta and being monotype and your signature move not even being able to hit Volphy hurts pretty bad. I guess you have like Narco for coverage, but most of the time you don't want to hit Narco. You can punish special defense teams if you're like Madness buff or if you proc Trance. But teams are really mixed right now, so it's not like having one very high defense is going to help you significantly. And right after it is Guldur. Alright, Guldur's the worst time in the game. I think it's even worse than Valia right now. I do. Guldur does nothing unique for a Toxic. You would pick any other Toxic before you pick Guldur right now. I'm sorry, Guldur lovers. I know you're out there, but this ain't the meta for it. It's like they pretty much removed Guldur's bulky identity and they tried to replace it with a weird offensive one with Madness buff and Venom spread. If you're running Venom spread, you're probably going to throw Acronox instead, and with like Guldur's HP stat, you don't want to lose 30% of that to Madness buff. You don't ever. This buff Venom spread Schweenshorn. Once Schweenshorn gets fixed, even then, like I Madness buffed and Venom spread some stuff a couple days ago on the Madness buff team. It didn't even kill. It didn't kill what I wanted it to. Plus, Guldur like really doesn't have a trait. Like no matter which one you choose, Punching Bag's okay. It's really not great. Yeah, Guldur's just bad in every way. I cannot recommend ever running Guldur right now. It needs to be looked at. Big changes. I almost wish we could split Volarin between like anaerobic and aerobic because they just have two completely different play styles. But I think in general, it probably actually, you know what? Both of them are probably B, maybe B plus. So the reason that Volarend, yeah, maybe B plus. Volarend is amazing as a counter tem. It was one of the best like counter meta tems, I suppose, because it walls Volphy, it walls Oshiara, it walls Turok, or no, it doesn't wall Turok. It walls Platamus. It like resists Earth at least, but Turok also walls it back. So it's it walls a lot of common meta threats, but it itself is not threatening. And aerobic it still feels bad that you're lowering your special defense. But you can still smack stuff really hard with a hyperkinetic or tornado. And Toxic Plume's still a good move. Just throw some crystals on the team, punish the physical attackers on your opponent's side. Having only one weakness defensively also makes it solid. But anaerobic only being +1, it definitely hit it hard. But it's still just really good as a counter meta tem, honestly. That's kind of the main reason why you'd run it. Counter so many other toxics and some other types as well. Grumper, I love Grumper. If I'm being biased, I'm putting Grumper in B plus tier. I Grumper offensive typing is insane. Defensively, it's not good at all. But it has Sludge Gift, Prio, Thunderstrike, Tesla Prison, Dust Vortex, Electric Storm, pretty much all the stuff it wants. But realistically, it's probably about B tier. Honestly, I think Grumper's pretty well balanced. Maybe has a bit too much bulk. Problem is like one of the big types it wants to hit is water, and water types can hit Grumper really hard, and typically they're going to be faster. Oshiara and Platamus are kind of the two big names. And also Grumper right now gets walled by, Grumper gets walled by Volphy, which is also popular right now. Um, so it's like Grumper has a lot of good points, but also has a lot of bad points. I was using Grumper as an actual Tem, not as a slowdown Stonewall cringe supporter. Yeah, slowdown's another good option on it right now, but I think that's going to kind of go away once the Gallios control teams fade. We'll see. Nessa ruins Grumps. That's true, yeah. Platypus also a meme, or is it really that good? No, Platypus is definitely A plus tier. It is. I'll probably put Volfi and maybe even Oshiara up there, but it actually deserves to be up there. Pookie's the only meme on here. That's just because it's my mascot. What rank did I reach? I reached rank 3 last season, but then dropped to rank 4 by the end when the season ended. Yeah, Grumper B tier sounds about fine. Counters a whole bunch of stuff, but also gets countered fairly easily. Gazuma. I thought Gazuma was going to be way worse without fast charge, but I was definitely wrong. The thing's still just a huge pain in the butt with all the stats they gave it now. I mean, by rank 3. Like, on ladder, I was like the top third player in the game. I thought you asked what rank I was. So I reached rank 3. Like, I was the third highest player in the game for a little bit. But I mean, it's not really the best judge of skill. Ladder's kind of skewed towards people who are able to play more games. But I can at least say I was, and I was answering your question. Cosmo's defensive type is so good. And the speed control with Tesla Prison. I think Cosmo's actually pretty well balanced now. I don't think it. I don't. It's really nice as a support. It has speed control, both dropping and raising with Tesla and Turbo. Also, Hurricane's really good spread move. Can raise its own speed. Tornadoes, like Cosmo has a crazy high special attack stat. You could even have like minimal invest and still hit stuff hard. Being able to be kind of a counter to Oshiara and or being able to hit the waters and to hit the toxics without being Volfi, I think, is valuable. It's just problem is you're mainly a support as Gazuma, so it's a bit hard to justify. Start now and play Temtem. Do you think Mono Digi still works in PvP and PvE? No, they changed harmful microwave synergy so that it is synergizing with electric, so you can't go Mono Digi. If you wanted to start out with like a Digi team, you would have to throw some electrics in there. I think on squad sharing on the main Discord, there's one made by Crema. Also, I think like the Blue Friday team by Tickles still is pretty solid. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I know he recommends that one to people sometimes. I mean, we'll put Oshiara in A tier, just because monotype does hurt it some. With Hurry War, you can pick Oshiara on lead, swap it out, and then swap it back in later, and then Serbatios is off hold. Click Serbatios, you get +2 special attack. All of a sudden, your Water Blade's hitting about as hard as an Aquatic Whirlwind every single turn at low stamina. Oshiara punishes any team that doesn't have enough resists to it. If it's a crazy good cleaner, it's crazy high spread damage. It's insanely fast. Because it has such high special attack and speed stats, you're able to actually sack a lot of TVs and put them into bulk so you don't die immediately to one hit. Yeah, Oshiara is just kind of super strong. It's one of my least favorite Tems to face in the entire game right now. But it does have counters. It's just like you need to have adequate counters to it. Volfi is one of its better counters because it can't be hit by its spread moves and it can smack it back with a plague. Yeah. Yeah, that about sums it up. Psycho Share really has a lot of flexible things. It runs Tsunami, Serbatio's, Water Blade. It does have a flex slot which you can either use for coverage with Unseen Blow or Blizzard, or you can just run like Sharp Rain and go full water and just have a second super strong water nuke. Yowler. Yowler's gonna go in B plus tier. Uh, Stall Yowler is still a huge pain in the butt. It's a little bit more manageable now that Schween's not the like best support in the game. But Comebacker Yowler's actually seen a huge rise in popularity recently, and it's kind of a pain to deal with. If you don't have mentals to punish it with, Yowler can pretty much one for one trade with any Tem it wants. And then like neutral's just such a good defensive type. You can't kill Yowler that quick. You just can't. A well spread Yowler just won't die in 2 hits. It's got high. You can't ignore it either because it'll just throw Savage Suplex and even has coverage with Oshi. You just throw handcuffs on the Volphy you already have on your team and like Torment's a problem. I'm not sure what other moves it uses, but it's basically just clinch Oshi and Savage and they all just do a ton of damage. It's just actually a big threat. But it's like it's still a monotype and it's slow. It's weak to control, so it's not above B plus tier by any means. Can be poisoned down. Garrio's a bit tough. Garrio's actually a really strong Tem, but because of that 4 times weakness and because of how popular Volphy is, it's probably just gonna go in B tier. It also gets walled by water types, stuff like Platamus and Oshiara, which are popular, and can't really hit Toxics. But it's really punishing for so many types, and Autotomy is just a crazy good trait. Free evasion for 2 turns means you either have to ignore Gario for 2 turns and it can roam free, or you have to double in to even kill it. And it's not that hard to calc Gario to live a plague from a Volphy. So more or less, you're gonna have to actually spend 3 turns killing a Gario, which is about all you can ask for. The problem is it's slow, but it'll almost always get a few hits off. And unless your opponent has like a really good board to resist those hits, it'll always get value. Broccolum. I love Broccolum. If it wasn't for all the toxics around, I'd probably put it in B plus tier. Camouflage is a crazy ability. Like being able to pretty much scaring off half of the damage types in the game being physical because you're gonna get evasion if you attack it. Like you don't want to use a physical attack on Broccolum unless you know that you're not gonna attack it the next turn or this turn, the next turn, or if you can kill it in 1 hit. So it's super punishing for physical boards. It's an amazing pivot, and it has really good coverage and damage options. Stuff like Plague for priority, Inner Spirit just as a nuke, and Sensei Robe as an item, Soul Shout, Resin Trap. It's also got a ton of weaknesses, and one of those being toxic is rough. Faraday Cage actually only pushes off the Isolate, so you still get poison through it. Sting, now that its Sting is special, you actually don't push off the Toxic by being stung from an Acronox, which is super sad. That was one of the biggest changes with Sting becoming special, in my opinion. But that's just because I use Brock a lot. But it's not like Brock is bad. It's just kind of like another counter meta pick. It's like the best counter in the game to Volphy, because Volphy can't touch it at all, and Broccolum just can do 80% of its health with an Inner Spirit, or a Soul Shout, or Inner Spirit just one-shots it, so still kind of nice. Schween. It's like, I just realized there's like 2 noodles in a row. I guess Schween, and then you got Nestle. I'd almost argue that Shween's like a little below average now. Nah, nope, 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 nope. Let's just forget I said that. Fluid barrier support with amphibian teams is really where Shween finds its home. Like it's basically an amphibian team with like a raid boss secondary. Being able to raise special defense is super valuable. Fluid barrier and court shield both do that, but that's about all it does. Like offensively, it's not too much of a threat. Water cannon's nice when you're pairing with toxics to apply toxic ticks, and crystal bite's good for threatening out electrics and mentals and stuff. But most of the time, you're just going to be clicking the support moves whenever you can. But Shween is weak to stuff like Wolfie and melees. So most of the time, you actually want to pick Shween on lead, or people will just ban it if it's an issue. And also, you're facing a lot of Shell Lance on lead. Guardian's also a crazy good ability. Being able to prevent poison ticks on your ally is valuable with all the toxics around and such. Also, you can actually kind of swap it into avoid speed control from stuff like the Tesla Prison users, which can be useful. Nesla is one of the best electric types in the game, behind Garunder. Water type that's immune to electric really helps supplement a lot of teams. There's been a lot of teams I've made in the past where I'm like, wow, I need another water type, but I don't want to be weak to electric, and I'm running a faster team than Gario is going to fit on. Oh, good thing Nestle's immune to it. Electric Synthesize is a great ability. It doesn't come into play all the time, but it at least threatens like a Nestle swap to heal off an electric move. And also, it's just a type immunity. There's very few of those in Temtem, so it's valuable. Nestle's got constant priority with Water Blade, and then Aquatic Whirlwind for a harder hitting one. Thunderstrike just for great turn 1 electric stab, and then last slot's kind of flex. I usually run Electric Storm, but Tesla Prison's also great. Even seen some Bright Beams and Sparks used before. So Nesla really does everything it wants to for its type. It's just a little bit on the slower end. It's not too hard for faster threats to outspeed it, because its max speed is 272, and lots of fast stuff can hit 273 real easy. Plus, weak to toxic. Valyar is going in D tier again. They gave it back Black Hole, which is nice. And I found out last patch they gave it Psywave when they said they gave it Nightmare Feed, which I think they did give it Nightmare Feed, and then they changed it back to Psywave, because that's what they meant to give it. So it's interesting where it can be like a dual defense drop support. It can drop either defense or special defense. But it's not super... Like, 2 stages isn't like worth running a Tem for. If you want a physical defense dropper, you're going to run like Mashuk or another perfect jab user. And if you want a special defense drop, like it's okay at doing that, but the problem is Psywave is on a hold, because special defense is a lot harder to buff. That means they also have to make it equally hard to drop. So, and then like Valyar's not an offensive threat. I saw some interesting stall sets with Ultrasound and Denigrate, which is kind of annoying, because it still has Bamboozle and Hypnosis, but it doesn't have a good turn 1 option. You're pretty much forced into running Telekinetic if you want to do anything turn 1. But then you also don't want to run 2 attack moves on your support Tem, one being Denigrate. So I think if Psywave was to ever get changed down to be 0 hold, I think Valyar would jump up in use, just at least as a special defense debuffer. But as of right now, like any supporting that Valyar wants to do, I think Auhi does better. That's just my opinion. And I mean, if you're going for a mono mental, you probably either want Pocus or Sambi anyways. Lowaddle. If I was to place Lowaddle right now with all the speed control teams, like the Gallios combos, yeah, it probably just goes B- anyways. Lowaddle will never be top tier because it's awful defensive typing. It'll always be a little bit subpar. It's got some cool sets it can run. Stuff like Voodoo Roots is really good speed control, and Seppuku is nice as a Doom option, and then Penance is like the best offensive buffing move in the game. High prio +4 to both attack stats. Um, Problem is, it's just like Waddle dies to a lot of stuff. See, it's just hard to find the right team for it. Anyone who can deal with it probably will just leave it around, and anyone who can't will just ban it. So it's pretty rare that you're actually going to have a good game with Waddle, because a good opponent will be able to deal with it, and one not as familiar with Waddle probably will just ban it. But it is annoying on control teams. It does get blue screen. I don't think that's gonna put it any higher than B minus. It'd be nice if Waddle could be anything else other than like a blue screen spammer. Calibus is probably floating somewhere between B and B minus. Kind of in the same spot as Goulder and Nox. It's just it spams toxic ticks. The advantage that Calibus has is Strangle, which is a really good control move, especially for a slow bulky Tem like Calibus. The advantage it has over Noxolotl is just coverage being a water move. Water is super valuable because it hits both Tolkien and Turok, two Tems that want to be in front of a toxic type. So Calibus, like, if it's sitting in front of a Tolkien, you can just smack it with a Water Blade and it still probably does 40-50% of its health. Turok, probably a little less. But it's almost like an even trade. You eat a Wind Burst, but you hit it with a Water Blade, so it still gets used that way. And even if that's not on that board, it can just Strangle, punish a swap, toxic ticks, and then also it has Flood if you really want that as a speed control option. So I mean, it's flexible. It's bulky. It does really what it wants to do. It does get walled easily though, and it's not like an immediate threat you have to deal with. And it's weak to control, but it's not a bad Tim, just slightly below average. Adoro. This thing got nerfed just slightly on its bulk, but really it kind of does the same thing as last patch. It just spams Denigrate, lowers the special defense, runs a defensive item. It takes you 4 hits to kill it, so you're going to take 4 hits of Toxic Skin for the most part, and you're going to lose like half your health just from the trade alone. it's annoying to deal with. It's immune to sleep, so it's not as punished by being slow, so it can't be controlled nearly as easily. Its defensive typing is both good and bad. It's got some resist, but I think it's got an even amount of weaknesses. Problem is most of them run reactive Vial, so even if you have an advantage on the defensive type chart, it'll still just kind of neutralize that. Also, it has Inner Spirit, so even if you bring an Earth or a Crystal in to kind of wall it, it can still smack you after a couple turns. So that's kind of one of the bigger issues with attempting to counter Adoro. I think I think Denigrate could use a little bit of a nerf, either an increase in stamina cost or a slight damage nerf. I think those would help out just a bit. Adoros just run like 700 TVs plus in bulk. And it's just they don't even need to invest in special attack just because they'll survive, deal damage with Toxic Skin, and hit you with a little piddle damage all the time. Tukai got Turbine this patch. Tukai has a worse physical attack stat than Auhi. And Strange Horn doesn't even work right now. I don't know. Giving 2K Turbine was a bit of a weird change. I don't think there's an issue with it, but just kind of like, why? Why would you bother? If you're running 2K, you're going to run it special. Spreader's still a pretty strong ability, but most of the time you're going to be better off focusing your damage into one slot rather than splitting it between two. Hydrologist, you'll see sometimes. It's basically if you want just a wind water type for some reason, and you just want the turn one wind option that Whipple can't offer. Problem with like spreader though is that you actually get Volfi walls you with Team Elusive, so that kind of sucks. Among other things, like just Water Wind is a bad defensive type. Tolkien could almost go down to B plus tier, just because there's so many waters around. Maybe it should. I mean, Tolkien's so reliable. Just his toolkit, it always runs Fiery Soul, Windburst, Tornado, and Fire Tornado. You have options with either trait if you want Heater for a bit more of a like safe swap pivot, and Pyromaniac if you just want straight up damage. But Tolkien's offensive abilities and defensive type chart are just super solid, and they really have been for as long as I've been around. I still put it in A tier. I think it's banned like every game, whether it's on my team or the opponent's. The thing, like, wind is only resisted by two types, so having wind as a secondary type to hit stuff that would normally resist fire is kind of what makes Tolkien better than most other fire types. It's just so hard to wall. The only things that really wall Tolkien are, I guess there's a few of them, but there's not a whole lot. What makes Platamus so strong? In short, it's fast, it has evasion, it has a good defensive typing, and it does lots of damage. Basically everything you'd want it to do. Aquatic Whirlwind, Toxin Shower are both very strong, and has other options besides that, as well as a decent stat spread. Just say above average stat spread. Tuvine. Physical Wall. CPG's great move. Feathergat's a great move. Turbine's good prio. And then it has like flex slot in either Nox Bomb or Humiliating Slap in the last slot. So it's really nice. You just invest a little bit of special defense in this so you're not as weak there, and then you can kind of just face whatever you want, tank a couple hits, and hit back really hard. I love Tuvine. I can splash it on almost any team. It's a super great counter to toxic types. I'd almost argue it for it being or like A tier. Kind of want to put it in A tier. It's my tier list. I'm putting it in A tier. I mean, Tuvine's really its only weakness is its special defense stat being a bit lower, but you can fix that with TVs. It really has Tuvine has pretty much everything you'd want in a kit, kind of similar to Tolkien. It is a bit sad it's weak to Shelllant, and it's weak to Tolkien itself, but it has so many good options. What happened with Rolder? Yeah, Rolder got completely gutted after that patch when it was top tier. Hello, Hazarov, welcome. Turok. I don't like Turok as much as I like Tuvine, but they should probably be in the same tier. Because they kind of do the same thing. Turok is a wind that resists toxic as well, which is great. Has good turn ones, Stoneball, Feathergat, Turbine for Prio, and Rockfall, both of which work with Tack Strike. You can even run it faster with Solar Steam Gravel Bag. But it does have a lot of losing matchups, which is the unfortunate thing. Its type charts, if you look at the top tiers, I feel like more of them win into Turok than they do into Tuvine, but maybe that's just me glancing at it real quick. I guess the main thing is like Turok has a worse matchup into the waters of like Platamus no Shiara. Tuvine has a little bit better of a matchup into those. So that's, but in general, I'd say they both fill. They're both one of the like among the best for their typing of like crystal and earth. So it's got to put them way towards the top. Definitely things to consider. Any website or place you can check good teams to play. You only have your old Digimon team on Switch. Yeah, so check the main Discord if you're in that, the Temtem main Discord. And there's a forum for squad sharing, and you can see a whole bunch of teams posted in there. I'll also be creating a team tomorrow that's just like a solid, easy to use meta team. At least I hope it'll be easy to use. And I'll post a code so anyone can copy that and use it. I think this is taking like way longer than the last one. This tier list. Maybe try and speed up just the rest of them a little bit. 2-wire got changed around. So it was one turn less of common factor, but its defenses are increased. I wasn't sure about this change at first. In fact, I thought it was going to be awful. I thought 2-wire was just like, okay, all I see it as is a nullify support. But the thing is, Digi is such a good offensive type that being able to take advantage of that after one turn is really good. And it also prevents a lot of the cheese from pushing off the statuses with either Synergy Feathergat or like Handcuffs, Emanip or something to get type advantage. Because it only lasts one turn anyways. You just don't get a whole lot of value if you do that. And then it's also got some interesting support options with like Reset, Hologram. I don't think it's going to be above B plus tier though, just because after Common Factor wears off, it does have a lot of type weaknesses. Digital Wind is kind of awful that way. Plus, for the most part, the only time you're going to be using 2-wire is still for Common Factor, but you're still going to be using it whenever you want a nullify support. Why the Discord channel asks you for your pronouns? USA thing. Someone playing. You don't have to put it in there. It's just kind of a optional thing that they ask you. Some people care about it. Some people don't. Tutu. Kind of in the same realm as 2-wire. It's really good support for melees and wins, but it's more like if you're intentionally type stacking those two, it helps you, but you would only type stack because of that. So it's like I like Tutu the same thing as Size Munch. You're playing it in a melee core, for the most part. Like Tutu has high toe support. It's pretty fast. You can even go Contemplation if you want. So it's somewhat flexible. But its offensive typing and defensive typing are kind of awkward. It is nice against Toxics, just being a wind in general. But Tutu doesn't have Turbine, which is one of the big things why you would run the other birds over it. Because like you have Turbine, Tornado, even actually, I think all the birds have like Turbine that want it now, except Tutsu. So that's kind of sad. Rip Tutsu. So yeah, just basically because Tutsu doesn't have Prio that's not Tornado, it's just going to be in B tier. It's not that it's bad. I think it's pretty well balanced. I don't think it needs any changes. I should have clarified way earlier. Maybe I'll clarify at the end if I remember. B is basically doesn't need any changes. B minus is it can get by without any changes, but maybe would benefit from a small buff. B plus is probably the same thing. It's just slightly better than the curve, but can definitely do without changes. C is it could definitely use some help, some more significant help, and D means yeah, it really needs help. A is these are strong meta slots. You could probably throw these in just about any team and get some use out of them. A plus, yeah, Platimus is just way too strong in comparison to the rest of the Thames. This Platimus alone gives value on just about any team you throw it on. Kinu. I haven't seen a whole lot of Kinus. It got Denigrate, and I thought it was going to be used a whole bunch more on stall teams. Because it has reliable healing with Lifeful Sap, Kaleidoscope, has Hypno Control, it even's got Turbo support. It's kind of used with Waspian on the sleep control teams now. But for the most part, you're going to be using other stuff. It's not the only way it has to raise stats now, this doesn't have Stonewall from a long time ago, is Sacrifice, which you don't want to click. So I think it doesn't really find its place in stall much anymore. It's just kind of some unique mid-range teams that run Kinu nowadays, and even those are few and far between. I don't think it particularly needs changes. I think it has its niche. Protector is still nice to just give any Tem you want a little bit of a boost, and Benefactor constant healing if it is still pretty good too. Maybe I'd put it in B minus. It's just I struggle to find or to think of a team where you would really want Kinu on it. One of the biggest draws of Kinu is it's a mental that's not weak to electric, but Gallios also kind of fits that now, and they almost fill similar niches, just depending on how much healing you want, or if you want healing or not. So I almost think that the introduction of Gallios actually lowers Kinu's tier just the slightly bit. It is Luma Zephy and Oshuchi today after breaking 7 times Luma. Did you have a Luma of them before? Either way, I mean, Lumas are still really cool, so congratulations. Congratulations, yeah. Volcrane. Volcrane got Rockfall and like 4 special defense guys. Alright, let's make it top tier. No. Rockfall was one of the strangest changes in this entire patch. In fact, I think it was the weirdest one. Because back in 1.4, they said one of the things they were doing was they were going to condense movesets so that they weren't going to double up on similar moves. So stuff like Hypnosis and Lullaby, they were going to get rid of one of the 2 moves. But now Volcrane has Rockfall and Stone Trench. 2 moves that are just spread earth moves that are normal prio. One of them gives evasion, one of them does burn, but effectively it's the same thing. And Volcrane's special defense is still bad. Like I can't think of any calcs where the +4 special defense really has an impact. I mean, sure, it's just like general special defense. It's not like anyone's going to complain. I don't like patching up Tem's weaknesses in their stats. I think you should just make Volcrane better do what it wants to do. Give it a move that helps it to OX with Vigorous, like a high stam cost move. Or give it a way to increase its speed, like I said earlier in the video. Like, just give all the slingshot users some move to raise their speed. It's like rework footwork, or make it 0 hold or something. I don't know. Volcrane needs something for sure. Yeah, definitely. Pig. Pig's rough too. It still kind of has its niche in install teams. Maybe I'll put in B minus tier for that. Still one of the better buffers because it has Stonewall and Divine Inspiration. Even has Turbo. Like you wouldn't think about Turbo being useful on a stall team, but I've seen it a few times and it definitely flips stuff. But I mean, it's not great. And offensive Pig, like Friendship War Pig, never really took off. If Pig had like H slap or some way to lower defense, you could probably see it more often, but its current state, there's just no way. It's just a meme at this point offensively. It just has some use in stall teams. Even then, I think some are just kind of going without it now, so that's why it's kind of below average. Just a little bit. Acronox. It's actually pretty solid now. Yeah, I mean, it's not like a whole lot changed with it. It's just that's so like yes, Petrify got reworked and Acronox learns it. Does it slot it? No. The thing is that Sting got reworked, so now it's a special attack. So now instead of Sting doing basically like negligible damage but 2 toxic ticks, Sting actually does respectable damage now. It's not great, but it's like a prio move, and you know every Tem loves prio, so it's just getting more value with Sting, and like I said, the Broccolin matchup is just a little tiny boost, but it helps. That's not a Toxin Shower user too. Just still one of the stronger moves in the game. And then it's like it's a toxic, and it also kind of beats a lot of other toxics, which is helpful because it walls Garunder completely. With Book Lungs, you can kind of have a good matchup into Platamus and Oshiara and stuff as well. Cobweb helps push off the Doom from Gallios a lot easier and sets up for late Torment options with Yowler. So there's options on Acronox. It's not top tier. I think it's in a pretty good spot. I don't think it would be bad if it maybe got a little something else, but I think it would be just fine if it wasn't changed. Like I said at the start, I'm gonna ignore all the questions and maybe play some of the more common ones on the list at the very end. And Volfi is going to be the only other A plus Tem in the game. Volfi in itself really is kind of mediocre. All of its stats are actually a little bit below average, but it has one of the best defensive typings in the game, having only one weakness, multiple resists. Its speed, while it is low, is kind of like you gotta look at Volfi as if it's always clicking Prio because it has Plague and Sludge Gift, which is hold 0 Prios for both of its stabs, meaning it can hit you hard, relatively hard, but really fast. Uh, Volfi just checks so many common Tems, and Team Elusive is a great defensive trait. It has a stronger nuke with Dust Vortex that can use. It has a couple support options with Jinx Whisper, Lifeful Sap if you want to run Kaleidoscope and Bush and stuff. Even Quicksand and Sandstorm. I mean, Volfi is just so flexible in whatever you want it to do. The biggest thing is that it gets walled by natures. So if you get into an end game where it's Volfi against a nature, usually just the other nature wins. But if you play around with or if you use your Volfi correctly, it can be pretty threatening on most boards. I mean, really, Volfi shines when it has type advantage. But the thing is, it covers so many types, it will usually have type advantage. Yeah, it kind of covers it. I talk about Volfi a lot in my other streams normally too. I struggle to put Waspien any higher than B tier. I'd kind of put it in B minus tier, maybe even C. It's just like so Waspien last patch didn't see like any use at all, but Waspien gained an amazing partner in Gallios, which kind of boosted its play rate. Being able to, it's just kind of like a really control team that punishes all slow opposing Tems. I can't find a definitive spot for it until we know what the Gallios or how Gallios is going to be once the bugs get fixed. The bugs like Adrenaline Shot working more than once is kind of the main one. And we kind of got word that Krema's going to look at Gallios' moveset and game plan sometime in the future. So I'm not sure where Waspien's going to fare then, but Waspien's signature, Swarmade, just got a direct nerf this patch, so it kind of sucks. But I mean, Waspien's a bulky reset user. Royal Jelly's still a crazy good ability. It got Plasma Beams, so it can at least do some chip damage. But I mean, in general, like Waspien doesn't do a whole lot. It's basically if you're using Waspien, you're running at max speed with Fat Burner for a bulky Crystal Deluge user that can also heal. That's kind of the only time you ever use Waspien. And I think once it loses Gallios as a partner, it's going to kind of go back to not doing a whole lot. And I guess, but okay, besides Deluge, it also has Blue Screen. Blue Screen's a huge pain. Creates a lot of space once it's used. But really, it only punishes slow teams, from what I've seen. Not that it can't be, not that it can be ignored on fast ones, though. Moments. Moments is probably pretty balanced now. It's not amazing. It's not bad. Refurbished. I mean, Moments didn't get any changes this patch, I don't think. Like, viral combustion is kind of a bad trait and should get looked at some point, in my opinion. You'd think with all the toxics around it might be useful, but it's not. If it didn't get toxic at all and just kind of sent the poison ticks, but or the burn ticks back, then maybe it would be interesting. But you're just running refurbish, getting your 3 regen ticks. It's just a stall, or it's just a raid boss recipient, buff recipient. Revitalize, block, plasma beam, digi-threat, or resin trap. Binary flood. Has good options. It's not super overwhelming. It has one of the better defensive and offensive combos types in the game. But it's slow and weak to control. The fast charge nerf hit it kind of hard with the Gazuma combo. Before, Gazuma plus Moments used to be a really threatening mid-range combo, but now it's not nearly as bad. Yeah, it's kind of... I think it's fine. I don't think Moments needs any changes right now. It's kind of the summary of it. Hazrat. It's another A tier. Hazrat's offensive typing is pretty cracked. It's walled by earth types, but the thing is, Hazrat really loves to be next to waters. I think one of the things like contributing to Hazrat's popularity is that there's 2 popular waters right now, being Platamus and Oshiara. Whatever. I feel like more people are going to get confused by that. Yeah, so Platamus and Oshiara really make good allies for Hazrat. Like an Oshiara plus Hazrat lead's super threatening. The only thing that really counters it is Volfi, like that I can think of off the top of my head. You could lead something like Turok as well and just eat the tsunami, but that kind of feels bad to do. I guess other toxics counter it as well. But it's just waters give Lava Wave priority. Even if Lava Wave doesn't have prio, Hazrat has priority with Venomous Claws, which is useful. Anytime Hazrat comes onto a positive board, it's able to click Heat Up as your opponent's pivoting out, and then you can get punished later for that. So, Hazrat's super strong. Also, it doesn't even mind dying with Toxic Farewell. Toxic Farewell got hit kind of hard, but it was almost more of a rework as well. Instead of doing 3 ticks and 10% to one tem, it deals like 7% and 1 tick to both tems. So you can't just sack it to your opponent's carry to do a ton of true damage to it, because it's split. But also, like, if you're... I don't know, it's still like you don't want to kill a Hazrat because you're going to take damage sometimes. See, I got to think about that a little bit. Minotaur... It's not like Minotaur is bad, but it's not great either. Minotaur's like favorite partner is Volfi, so it has use that way. But Minotaur is pretty much an electric, or like that's got mental coverage. Like turn 1, Minotaur doesn't have any real mental moves. The only mental move it has is Black Hole, which is kind of a bad move. It only even has normal prio when you have Earth synergy. It does appreciate the Piezo Electric Blow stamina buff, though. But I still haven't seen a whole lot of them. You'd think they'd be more common in dealing with like Platamus and Oshiara and such. But it's weak. It's weak to Volfi. It's weak to like Crystal super bad as well. And it's like Minotaur's special defense stat in general isn't all that high. So you hit it with a like if it swaps in and eats a special attack, it's not going to want to. And if you don't lead Minotaur, it doesn't get a huge advantage. Because the main thing is it gets +2 speed with Rusher on the first turn it's on the field. After that, it's really hard to find the right board state to bring it in and be useful. You used to pick Minotaur kind of as a flexible lead into just about anything. But now you can pick Volfi or Shelllant and do the same thing. So Minotaur's seeing less play. Among other things. Moala, so Hypnotist got changed. So instead of proccing on turn 1, it actually procs after 2 turns, or after Moala's been on the field 2 turns. But the thing is, instead of sleeping everyone on the field, including your ally, for 1 turn. It sleeps just your opponents for 2 turns, which creates so much space. It's actually crazy. The problem is finding the right time to do that. You essentially have to swap Moala in, and while your opponent is pivoting, you're able to get the second turn free. So it's not impossible, and it's probably easier. I think Moala is one of the Tems, again, that just needs to be experimented with more and might become top tier later on. Being able to get a Zen Med off while your opponents are sleeping can sometimes flip games. Also, a paralyzing poison is essentially doing the same thing. Problem is Moala's just defensive type is awful. It's weak to melee, electric, or it's weak to mental, electric, digital, crystal, and it only resists neutral and melee. So I think it'll definitely be used on more melee and neutral heavy metas, but this really isn't one of those. So while like it can probably like it can eat toxic hits just fine neutrally. It's just like you gotta find the right board and then it can be useful, but in general it's not like a super flexible pick anymore. It's not a great option all the time. But it's menacing if you're not able to deal with it. Uh I'll count Venks. Venks has always kind of been a special case. I think Venks is kind of in the same realm as Tataru. It never really recovered after like the head ram and suplex nerfs. It's just kind of a ball of stats. If you want a neutral ball of stats, it's okay. But I mean, at the moment, if you're looking at adding a neutral, you're probably going to look at Momo or Mooflank to a team. And bulky aggro it just isn't in as good of a spot as before. The utility that Venks offers isn't a whole lot. It's got Strangle and Sacrifice. I guess it's got Ninja over Tataru too, but I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think it's that great. Venmet. Venmet's probably in the same tier. It's just like it's just Vent. It's just Venks with melee coverage and slightly higher damage and a weaker special defense. I don't know. It's just if you can swap Venmet out and then back in again, so you have +2 attack, it can be kind of nice. It's just Venmet's a little too slow to really make a lot happen right now, and its damage just isn't high enough. And lowering your own defense isn't really a great thing either. Vitamin Complex got reworked, and it's one of the Tems that could potentially use it effectively. But the problem is, with Aggressor, you actually want to swap in and out a whole bunch rather than stay on the field consistently. So while you would think Vitamin Complex works with it, it would actually kind of has like anti-synergy. It's just they have different game plans, so it's a bit tough. Ventil also received a whole bunch of like bulk buffs this patch. But I think it's even worse than these. They're all probably just. So the thing that makes Venmet better than Ventil is it can utilize Ninja Jutsu. Having a good, strong priority move helps significantly, especially after you've gotten a couple aggressor procs. Like if you're able to pivot Venmet in to eat a couple hits, survive, and get the ninja off when it's +2, that does a ton of damage. Ventil doesn't have that. It doesn't have good priority of any kind. It is one of the 2 time split users, and it is a little bit more bulky than it was before. But every time I see Ventil used, it's pretty much just there to click time split and then sacrifice eventually. And it's usually arcane wrap rather than spiritual. Because the damage boost given by spiritual and aggressor just isn't a whole lot. It stacks up if you're able to swap around a whole bunch, but Mental's an even worse defensive type than melee. Because the thing with like melee neutral is one of your weaknesses actually stacks. So you just have to avoid boards with mentals and digis. Ventil, you have to avoid crystals, electrics, and mentals and digis. So it's 4. So you having to avoid twice as many types. So that's one of the main reasons why Ventil's so much worse. Kip, you missed it. Moala's B tier, and I think it could be higher. So the patch notes and tooltip are actually wrong. So Moala, after 2 turns, sleeps just the opponents for 2 turns. So it's actually really crazy. It's just kind of hard to pull off. Chimerian's A tier. It's weak to fire, but overall it's actually really solid. And now has a whole bunch of synergy with like Decidora and Nagase. It's just one of the best crystals in the game. Crystal Plume Gatling hits super hard. Hostile getting a free attack buff. Uh, Frond Whip. Glass Blade was a good change to it. At the end of the second turn, no. At the start of the third turn. So it's literally 2 turns of sleep. It's it's not effectively one. It's 2 turns. Yeah, that's. I mean, Tremarian just hits hard. Has a relatively good defensive type. And it's even got solid defensive stats. Its HP is a bit rough, but its defense stats are really good. And its attack stat, which isn't great, is supplemented by Hostile. But just CPGs such as strong, hard-hitting move, and Frond Whip, and then priority with Glass Blade just makes it all around good. I mean, it could almost go down to B plus, but I would place it in A tier. It's gonna get value on just about every board. That's not fire. It can even smack a lot of melees back. You probably don't want it in against a Shallant, but even if you have even if you have it in against a Shallant, just because whatever's hiding behind Welcomer is weak to Crystal, I think you could still be fine. You can eat the Soul Shout and Inky like hiding behind Welcomer can't actually finish off the Chimerian. You're just watching and you have no idea what's going on. It's kind of it's interesting watching it. Should grab some water. But we're almost done, so I'll just finish up. Arachnite got a whole bunch of base stat buffs. You'd think it would be good? No, I wouldn't think it would be good. Arachnite has bigger problems than its base stats. It's held back by its insane coverage options. And the fast charge nerf was also hit it pretty hard. Arachnite's best partner was Gazuma, and you just sparks the Arachnite to turn it into an electric type and get +3 special attack with adaptive. It's +2 speed, and all of a sudden it's a really strong special attacker. But now you get less speed, and so it's always possible that your opponents can hit you first. I guess that was possible before too, but I don't know. I still think that giving Arachnite Overclock would be the best solution to it. Giving it away to proc its own adaptive and raise its own speed. I think that would be really good. I think, and then the other thing, like, I ran Bruiser Arachnite. I think that's the better way to run Arachnite, especially now with all the bulk buffs. But it just doesn't have a way to proc its own adaptive. So if you ignore the Arachnite on your opponent's team, you just... It's not going to do a whole lot of damage without adaptive. So he's either got... Your opponent has to attack it themselves, or it's just going to be doing, like, 33% less damage than you'd have to be taking if you just ignore it. Plus, Arachnite doesn't have great stam, so it doesn't have super good staying power. I just think a weakness like that's a bit too rough. And if you pivot, it just doesn't have the health to survive, and it can still be easily controlled. Monko. Monko also kind of got hurt by the fast charge nerf. A lot of Digis did. I'd say Monko's fine, though. It's just another Digi. It has like insane coverage. Monko in B+, its defensive type chart is so bad, and it's no longer supplemented by fast charge. It has really bad speed. Like, max speed Monko's like 260. That's awful. That's worse than Volphy. It's like, if on a team that doesn't have adequate digi counters, Monko pops off. Like, it definitely does. But it's more like a team check than anything else. Like, Monko is not consistently good. It's got decent bulk. Like it can live like a physical attack it's weak to, some like a cold geyser, but it's not gonna want to take an aquatic whirlwind or a thunder strike. Definitely can't take a digi move. Doesn't help that its priority like harm its best digital option is tied to synergy pretty much as well. Like sure you can use non-synergy harmful microwaves, but then you're using your actual speed, which hurts. I feel like most of the time if you're running Monka, you'd actually rather just be running Digi or I meant melee Chromion. That's just how I feel. But I mean, Monko does have reset, which is definitely a plus, and Plasma Beam to potentially do something with. Guess it kind of depends on what role you want your Monko to fill. But I just think it's kind of subpar among Digis right now. Anatan, I don't think Anatan's bad. I just don't think it's for this meta. Volfi's still everywhere. Turok's popular. Waters are popular. Sure, it kind of walls toxics, but the thing is that Anatan doesn't like eating toxic ticks. So yeah, it's Anatan's not bad. I don't think it needs to be changed right now. But having a severe 4 times weakness and being as slow as it is, I think it's just always going to be like its usage is always going to depend on the meta, and this just isn't one for it. So I'm going to put it in B minus, just because it's subpar right now, but I don't think it needs changes. Now we're on to the mythicals. We are almost done. Well, I'll still go through some of the questions and Chromions quick, like I said. Tyrannac. Tyrannac. It's not like Tyrannac got any worse. It's just the speed control teams that are everywhere that make it so that you see Tyrannac like a little bit less. HCan, hello. Doing well. I've been talking for like 2.5 hours straight about a tier list. So I'm just trying to finish it up, and I'm probably going to call the stream afterwards, but I'm glad you're able to make it. Good to see you. Yeah, the Tyrannac, being able to shut off traits is always going to be valuable. But with all the control options right now, it is kind of it's not quite as useful as it used to be. But I think B plus is still a great fit for it. There's also the thing like there's an interaction with Gallios and Tyrannac that we haven't got confirmation if it's a bug or not. But if Gallios dies to Doom and Tyrannac is on the field and Intimidator is active, Gallios still revives. It's kind of weird, but it's also really interesting. If you pay attention to Gallios, its trait actually procs once, and that's when it comes onto the field or when it revives. So it looks like Gallios' trait procs when the Doom happens. So it wouldn't actually happen again, and there's nothing to block with Intimidator because it doesn't proc a second time. But I don't know. We just need confirmation for Crema on that. That could change things around a little bit. But that's just another interesting interaction. Vogon. Vogon received a whole bunch of buffs that it didn't really need. Yeah, reviving to Doom is like a Tem design, not a trait design. It's definitely to the trait still. It's just that the trait activates only when the Doom is applied. Volgon's really solid. I don't know why it got buffs. If Volgon's never going to be a Tem that you just throw on any team, it's not 100% splashable. But when you need a synergy support, you're going to go to Volgon. It has its niche. It does it well. What more do you want Volgon to do? It has control options with Strangle and Ampere. And it has even buffing options with Stare or debuffing with Stare and then buffing with Beef Up. I'd almost even put it in B+. Like it, just because, I don't know. I think Volgon is such a well-designed Tem, in my opinion. I don't think it needed the changes. It'll be used when when it's good for a team, and it won't when it's not. And the short circuit's also cool. It's just not seeing a whole lot of use right now. Gallios gets a letter grade higher because you still have no idea what it does. You just focus on it before you find out. Yeah, Gallios is going to be tough to place because um, it's going to receive changes. And the Gallios we're seeing right now isn't the Gallios. It's always going to be the A shot Jinx Whisper max speed ones. It's not going to stay that way. If I was to place it right now, it would definitely be B plus at least. Like Gallios's existence completely stops like bulky offense. It's so weird. One Tum just threw off the entire balance of the game. Um, I think once it gets settled, it's gonna be lower tier. But I think for now, I'm just gonna put it in B plus tier, just to kind of give it an average. I think it's realistic. I think once they change A shot, so it's no longer bugged, it'll probably be B minus. So maybe I'll put it here for now. And just because I said I was gonna kind of ignore how bugs affect Thames, because like I'm putting Saipat in B plus tier, but Saipat's completely reliant on Schween's Horn. So I'm talking about once Schween's Horn gets fixed, then Saipat will be B plus tier. Yes. So for the same reason, once Adrenaline Shot does not renew on revive for Gallios, I think it's going to be B minus because it's kind of like a subpar control tem, but it does have a good type, and I think it still has a lot of unexplored potential. I don't think there's a whole lot of use in changing Gallios outside of just bug fixing it right now. Because I mean, it still has some cool moves with Denigrate. I think his signature is still really fun, and I like Dust Vortex is cool. Even speed control with Clay Ball. It's just people found what is probably the best use for it right now, being max speed, Jinx Whisper spam. But yeah, so that's just gonna be where I place Gallios. Is there any world where you can play Pookie on ladder and win? I did a full LC team where I used Pookie. I think Pookie picked up a couple KOs, but yeah, it's pretty rough. It's just up here for the meme. Okay, so that's gonna be the full tier list, but I will place a couple of the more common Chromions and Koishas real quick. So people will get mad at me if I just ignore all of them. I don't think I think Water Chromion. It got so many new tools. Water Blade's kind of crazy. I think it's Water Chromion's in a decent spot. I think Nature Chromion's right there with it. I think these three are kind of the main Chromions you're gonna see. I think Melee's even right there too. I think for Chromions, this is just kind of where they all kind of fall. Stop calling my signature tem a meme. Gotta respect it more. There are multiple players who would be really confused if if I don't clarify. Uh, so I have to. Uh, I missed some falls a long time ago. Oops. I guess that's what I get for using a different setup to use the tier list. Yeah. So maybe Water Chromion down here with Toxic being a little bit more niche. I think Nature Chromion's super good. Electric Chromion still synergizes with itself with harmful microwaves, gets lots of value from Mimit, and just the attack options for Melee are crazy good. Toxic, definitely I found success with, and basically for that reason, I think it's in B minus. And Water Chromion, I know Ali's experimenting with it, and it does seem super problematic. And so I think that one definitely has potential, so I wanted to put it on there. The rest of them, it's not that there isn't any use. I just think that if there is, it hasn't been found yet. Digichromion's trash though. If there was like a negative F tier, or just like a super F tier, Digichromion would be in it. As far as Koishas go, I think Digicoish is going to be B plus tier. Having all the benefits of being a Digi offensively, and it defensively not having any negatives with Iridescence is just really good. I'm going to be experimenting with it some more. I know some other people already have. That Toxic Chromium was freaking awesome a patch ago. Haven't seen it in a while anymore. Yeah, the team I made last patch with Toxic Chromion, I probably should update it if I want it to be used, but right now it's just not great. Don't have anything to clarify. Pookie on top, that's all they need to know. Decay is one of the best moves in the game. I don't know about that, but it's definitely a really strong move. And getting a Faraday getting a stand buff is super nice. Still see Nature Koi swimming around. I don't see that one much. There's too many toxics for it. Nature Chrome or Nature Koi will always just be like B tier for me. It's unstoppable in matchups where it's not countered, and it's useless in ones where it is. Electric Koish, I think it's solid. I think it goes in B tier as well. Fire Koish, I know Feynman's experimenting with it. It seems interesting. I can't really. I don't have an opinion on it, so I'm not going to put it on there. It doesn't seem that great. I could put like Fire Koish and Wind Koish down in like C tier, but I don't have enough info on them to to talk about them. Neutral Koish, I'm also not going to. Yeah. Too many of the Koishes just don't. I haven't seen enough of, and I just don't think it's that great. Crystal Koish got Sharp Stabs. Interesting. I think there's better crystals. Melee Koish got completely gutted. Mental Koish seems interesting, but I haven't seen a whole lot of people experimenting with it yet. Earth Koish got gutted. Neutral Koish got changed, and I think it was kind of an overall negative change. Toxic Koish, there's too many water toxics, and they're trying to differentiate them too much. Toxic Koish is the loser. Platypus is the winner. Can I like zoom in, zoom out? Okay. So here's the final tier list. I'll like probably post this on the main Discord or something. I'm not sure. You think Vex is better than B minus? I don't think so. It's just a ball of stats and it really doesn't do anything. So yeah, just kind of some closing remarks. I'm gonna post this on YouTube, and I'm hoping I'm gonna add like timestamps in either the top comment or the description, so it's easier to navigate. I know that there's going to be disagreements here, and that's perfectly fine. This is my opinion. I think in general, most things are going to be like maybe +1, -1 tier for most people. Posting tier list and competitive is a nightmare. Maybe I won't then. Most people who would want to see it are stop by in here. Maybe I'll just post the link to the video in the media's channel. Then people can just click dislike on the YouTube video like last time. My tier list was like it was my most viewed video, but also my most disliked, so kind of funny. I'm sure this one will be the same way. Yeah, I mean, disagreements are bound to happen. I think this is one of the most balanced metas we've had in a while. Only 2 in super high, none of them in technically S tier. No. None of them in Pookie tier. There's a lot of stuff to account for. Not a whole lot changed since last meta. There's not a whole much else to say. It's just I'm kind of burnt. What would I tone down on Plat and Volphy? I would nerf Toxin Shower. I would say it should be at minimum 23 stamina. I would argue closer to maybe 25. And for Volphy, I would remove Sludge Gift and replace it with Clay Ball. That's what I would do. I think that would put them, both Tems, a lot closer to B tier. Yeah, Platypus did get hit with the Sweatband nerf, but it wasn't enough. So, on our tier list, when? Probably never. On our tier list, it's just I'm not much of a PvE streamer at all. I'm not. Most Umbras are just gonna be like which which Lumas look bad enough that the Umbras are worth using, essentially. So, yeah, that's gonna be all for me today. I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all don't hate me too much after that. And yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll I hope to be back tomorrow with kind of like a meta team, just like a new good solid team code I can share with you guys, but no guarantees. I got an exam that's due on like Monday, so I'll see what I can do. Thank you all so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.